Okay. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Martijn Osman. For this presentation, Mr. Desktop. I'm a consultant in the end-user computing environment for about 15 years. And my partner in crime.
That's me. My name is Edwin Ruben. I'm a consultant for almost 15 years in end-user computing space. And you can call me Mr. Edwin for this presentation. Where are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about vendor-independent workspace design. And you can see this presentation as a thought experiment. We both are working on the same project. And in this presentation, you see at hand of some examples and some design decisions we made if our thought experiment is viable. And we want to discuss that with you at the end of the presentation. And we show you some examples and lead you through it.
Okay, does anybody know this building? Does it look familiar? No. This is, has anybody ever been to Beijing? No? This is the Chinese state television building, locally known as the Big Pants. And it's a complex but beautiful building, big in size, but also complex because of its shape. And it's kind of a metaphor for our customer case, or for our story, for us, our thought experiment. Okay, come on. Bye-bye. So, just to paint you a picture, this is our story runs in a government facility. For the fun of the story, we kind of greatly exaggerated all the examples, but it's a little bit more fun that way. We are dealing with a customer that has more than 25,000 users and a possibility of tripling in size in the coming years. That in itself is not a big challenge, but if you count a highly political environment take that into account, it makes it a little bit more difficult. Another nice factor is that the IT organization is servicing multiple different organizations, and those organizations by themselves are divided in sub-organizations with all different needs and requirements. The IT organization itself, there are a lot of players in that thing. Management, they want to invest in a new user workspace, and they say user experience is key, but make sure it doesn't cost that much. We have architects, enterprise architects in that space, who say, please decouple everything, because we're less dependent, and that's one of our key standards. We have line managers. Their only concern is manageability. They want to have a running organization that knows what they're doing, but they're very like an army. General gives an order and it goes down, and that's it. So they act like that. So for a project, it's nasty. Next to that, we have engineers. Engineers by default don't like change in general, because change means they have to go out of their comfort zone. They also have not a very high skill level, so basically everything we wanted to introduce is new for them. And that led to us knowing that we need to invest a lot of time and money in teaching them or getting them up to speed. But lastly, we also deal with procurement, which is very conservative. It's a government world, so they need to do tenders, and as soon as you take the word tender in your mouth, they're gone. So, all in all, it was, for the organization, it was difficult to think out of the box. They were in their safe zone, and it was difficult to think out of the box. So, we basically, with all those influences of all those players, our assignment was pretty simple. Build us a new virtual workplace. That was literally the assignment. And all those parties had different ideas on how to solve a problem. So, what to do?
So, like Jimmy and Arnold here, we had a brainstorm. I met Martijn 9 months ago. I asked him for the project, and I said, okay, let's do a brainstorm. And we brainstormed for approximately 5 to 10 minutes, and we agreed on, okay, this is the way we are going to do it. And after that, we read all the Gartner documents we could find. We read all the opinions we could find. We stayed to our beliefs. So, okay, this is the way we are going to do it. And we tried to tell our story. And from within the thought experiment, we ended up with our own 10 commandments. And that's the way we build our design, and that's the way we try to sell it to the organization.
Yeah. So first one was simplicity. IT, as you all know, is pretty difficult these days. So we try to keep it as simple as possible within range of the solutions. So that was a thing that is in the back of our minds.
Yeah, the second one was decoupled, and that was also an architecture wish. Keep everything decoupled. Don't get vendor locking. Keep the hardware decoupled from everything. So, yeah, we were reading on that a lot, and we found articles dating back to 2002 that talk about loosely coupled. And loosely coupled or decoupled is always the same.
Sorry.
Okay. You're drinking, but you're next.
Yeah. Next one was functional adequacy, meaning we wanted to use products that have the technical functional requirements that we needed. It's pretty basic.
Yeah, the next one was affordability. Do it as cheap as possible. Government, as cheap as possible. Yeah. It's difficult to build something like this in a greenfield situation and do it on an affordable way, because the only assignment we got is build us the next user workspace. That was the only assignment we got, and we asked the project team and the project managers and program directors, okay, how much budget do we have? What's the time frame? Over and over. We didn't get any answer, so it's really difficult for us.
Yeah. Next one, implementable today. So don't go for features that will be in a product, but use, if it's available today, design based on that. Even if we knew, because that's where this came from, that we have, they were using VMware, and we know VMware was going, or we know VMware is coming with extra new enhancements on vSAN, but it's not there yet. You don't know what you're building on.
So, designed to meet actual end client requirements. We deal with a lot of departments, with a lot of different users, and we have to meet all their requests. So, and that's really difficult, because you have to take a lot into account to do something like that. And every department or every organization we are building this platform for has their own wishes. So that was a real hard one to cope with.
Yeah. Next one, uses local expertise. The organization had certain expertise available, so where possible, reuse the expertise or build on that expertise, because it keeps them in a comfort zone, and then it's less of a risk for the project.
And the other one was where feasible, use locally available components. And like in the slide before, procurement is still a real pain in the ass for us. So we stick to the current hardware which the customer has. Yeah, that made our design decisions a lot more difficult than we hoped it would be. But okay, we are working with components that are available at the moment.
Yeah. Next one, low time to market. What we mean by that is short development cycles in make a base platform and then deliver that to the end user for testing, see if it's all right, and then go to the next functional set. Because you get the customer involved and you get feedback a lot faster than if you go for the end result and then start testing.
Yeah, and the last one was continuous updates. And continuous updates, you see a lot of application vendors like Microsoft or other applications vendors moving on to a DevOps principle. If you want to keep up with a platform like this, and you want to keep it updated and you keep everything going, yeah, you should go to a principle like continuous updates. So you should implement a DevOps organization-like structure. And yeah, that's what we try to do, but also really difficult. And with those 10 commandments in mind, we started to programming people. And we are programming people, the internal organization, for the last 9 months now. And we are telling our story over and over again, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. But we stick to our story. And after 7 months talking, we saw that people started adopting our principles, started adopting our ideas, some of them, not all of them. And yeah, we are going to the next phase at the moment. And it's really important that we stay to our design decisions and to our plans. And we now see that's getting adopted, so that's real cool. But it took really 9 months to get here. And if you talk about, we're going to lead you through some examples when you go there. And we said, okay, we want a vendor independent and a loosely coupled design. And this block shows a loosely coupled design. And in this block we have several layers, and one of the layers we're going to talk about is the storage and compute layer. And in our opinion, if you build a workspace environment for 50,000 till 100,000 users, the storage and compute layer is like the foundation of a house. If that foundation is not a solid structure, it will crack. So that was a real hard. That was real hard to get this over to people. And we see a couple of layers in the storage and compute layers. We have layer compute, we have a hypervisor layer, and we see also a storage layer. And within those layers you can make a lot of different choices. And for example, if you go to the compute layer, we had a really hard discussion with this. And we were thinking, okay, what can we use? Can we use hyperconverged infrastructure? Can we use Moonshot? Can we use this? And then we got, no.
No, you can't. You need to use Fujitsu because that's the company that won the tender. And within that tender, you have certain choices. And our standard is a blade.
Yeah, and we were thinking blades. Do we really want to use blades? Because why do we want to use blades? It's expensive. It's scalable till some level. And the other thing that we were thinking about was, okay, do we need GPU? Because you see a lot of applications using GPU at the moment. So do we need standard GPU in the compute layer? So we said to the customer, we want to have a rack service because
no. Our standard is a blade.
Yeah. And then we said, okay, blades. Why blades? Because blades are much harder to manage. You need very specific vendor knowledge to manage a blade chassis. And if you use rack servers are a commodity. Everybody can manage those. So it's really easy.
Yeah, but user experience is key.
Yeah.
That's what our management says, user experience is key.
Yeah, and then we were thinking, okay, put GPUs in it, but we can't put GPUs in blades because they don't fit. So we stick to the rack server.
They do fit.
Yeah, if you go to the the new NVIDIA cards, but you pay user licenses, it will be too expensive. It will be not feasible anymore. So we said, okay, now you don't get blades because blades scale till the chassis is full. Then you have to buy a new chassis or two because you have two data centers. And it will be very expensive. And we said we go to rack servers because we can use the GPUs. We have rack, we can scale with 200 users at a time. per rack server. It's like a building block.
But still, you will need more floor space.
Yeah, we will need some more floor space, we need some more cabling, but the data center is so large, who doesn't care? If you have the cabling, if you take the cabling in account, and if you connect the blade chassis to the faxes, those connections are much more expensive than have 69 ports in a rack. So, and the next layer that comes on the computer layer, that will be the hypervisor layer. And also, you have a lot of choices to make.
No, you don't have any choices. We use VMware.
Yeah, but but at that time we were thinking, okay, we want to use GPU, and VMware didn't have GPU at that time, not on the market. We do it now, but
still, VMware is our standard.
Yeah, VMware is your standard. But if you put VMware on those hosts with the licensing they have, it will cost us 22,000 euros per host. If you're going to build an environment with 400 hosts in the end, you talk about a large amount of money only for license. So we said, now we do Citrix, we do sensor, because you already have the license. And let's build a sensor.
Yeah, we don't have the knowledge. It's too expensive.
Yeah, and that's a viable reason, you know. All the administrators are trained on vSphere. Everybody knows vSphere. And a lot of people lack the knowledge of sensor, and that's true. But yeah, you can train people, you can give them a lot of training, and it should be possible. And also, it should be possible to do. And just thinking about the money only for licensing would give us a lot of other options to implement in this stack, about something like monitoring or other tools you really could use to manage an environment like this.
But still, our requirement was that, for example, if VMware would lower the licenses within reasonable standards, it would be feasible to take out XenServer and replace it by VMware.
But this is still under discussion, and this is a really hard discussion for us. And I understand that, because you want to implement a second hypervisor in an organization that is traditional VMware house. So, but yeah, we really think a hybrid solution for a workspace stack should fit. And last but not least, you have a storage layer. And we were thinking about, okay, do we want to depend on traditional storage?
You don't have any choice. You just invested heavily in EMC storage. Sorry, you just have to use it.
They bought Claudio's Lamborghini on storage. Yeah, that's true. But in an end-user good environment, you have very specific storage needs, and you don't really want to use traditional storage arrays. So we said to them, okay, we want to use rack servers with local storage, and we put a storage aggregation layer onto that, software-defined storage or something like that. And that will be the platform. It will be a complete independent stack.
True.
So, still on a discussion, because this is real hard to tell to people, to make them understand. And yeah, they come from a really traditional background of doing fat clients. The customer we are working for at the moment has, at this moment, 15,000 fat clients that they are managing with SCCM. So, and they want to move away from fat clients, and they want to move to a centralized,
into a private cloud.
Yeah, into a private cloud.
So the next one, workspaces. I missed the desktop. What do we see as a workspace? A workspace is basically, in our point of view, in a sort of decoupled sense, a software-defined workspace like the OS with apps and data and settings. So basically, it consists of an OS, applications and data, and user environment. On the OS, we have a lot of choices. Symbian, Microsoft, Mac OS, iOS, Ubuntu. The rules or the set of requirements we did get was that it should be any device. So we thought, okay, there's a nice way to decouple it. But they are a Microsoft house. So
yeah. You really have to use Windows 10 for this.
yeah, and Windows 10 was just about released. It uses continuous development, so testing will be a big issue. So we were talking to the test department, and they have ways. Fortunately, this customer has a test department that automates testing. So we have a feeling that we could automate when Microsoft releases a new major build, that we can really test the basic applications or the primary applications for that particular platform. But anyway, it's not really an option to say we're going to do Red Hat, for example. Although it's open source.
Yeah, but you have to stick to Windows 10.
Yeah, because that will solve all of our problems.
And if you think about that, you have one big vendor lock you never get rid of. That's what we might say. So, loosely coupled or vendor independent.
Yeah, it's a little bit shaky in this case. But if you look at the OS and we can subtract the applications and the data from the OS layer, and the OS is just a carrier to get to application and data, there is sort of a decoupling. And if we can go from a desktop OS to a server OS and to something else, it's sort of decoupled. Then again, the customer had a lot of experience with Microsoft. We didn't have to go through tenders, so it is a viable choice, although we are staying with the vendor locking. Next one, apps and data. First thing we looked at is we want to sort of decouple the data. They are now heavily invested in traditional file shares, and they are OS dependent. You cannot, or you can, but with lots of tooling, create a sort of file share on iOS. But in the end, it's still something that is really tied to a Microsoft world. I mean, the file share does not interact on macOS. If you make a file share, it's not the same look and feel or intuitive the same as in a Microsoft world. So we would like to do file shares, but then sort of mobilize the data. So
yeah, but we use CFL, and you can use CFL. It's fantastic.
ShareFile. They don't have ShareFile. They SharePoint, you mean?
Oh, okay. SharePoint.
But
sounds the same.
Yeah. SharePoint sort of solves part of the puzzle, but you have an enormous login with the Office version that has a login with the version of SharePoint you're using. If you go to a lower or higher version, so this was a discussion we cannot solve, but at least the data was sort of not relying on the OS to get to the data. So what we're now trying to do is get rid of the user home directory and have them move all that data into SharePoint. Because then it's sort of OS independent and decoupled from the OS.
But there should be a good user experience, you said, so that fails then.
Yeah, exactly. So we will not get rid of the file share. But on the other hand, that's what they want, because they also want to use it on an iOS device or on an Android device, depending on the user needs. So that will be a struggle, sort of a roadmap to go forward. But in the idea of getting data into an independent platform makes you more flexible than staying with a file share. For the apps, we had pretty much a similar idea.
We use FV and you have to use it.
Yeah, so that will solve part of our problem. Because on the Windows OS, we can sort of separate the OS from an application. If you're lucky, you can even go from Windows 8 to 10 without a problem, if you're lucky. But it will not get that Windows app to an iOS device. So that's why we went to application publishing or a published desktop. Anyway, the client that is used to get that those applications onto a mobile device should be able to do that. So that skips a lot of options down. So ideally, you would like to have mobile native apps or maybe HTML5 apps, which are really platform independent, depending on what they want to do. So it was a difficult discussion to get our thoughts stick on this particular part, because I'm not sure we're going to solve this.
Yes, and what about specific file types? For example, when you're editing jar files on SharePoint, it's not possible to store those files there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not, in that case,
on a lot of file types, not supported by
yeah, because it's government, they also would like to use the free Office versions. And all of a sudden, the user experience is, again, completely gone. So in this case, it's very, very difficult to get a really vendor-independent design on this particular layer. And then we have the user session. The user session. We have a lot of tools who can do something about this.
We're not going to use user environment management. We have GPP and we are happy with that, and we don't want it.
Yeah, so they wanted to use GPP because it would solve all their issues. Luckily for us, one of the guidelines we did get was that they would like to have context. So if you have a certain session from the outside, application should be hidden and stuff like that. So GPP was not directly the solution, although it would be possible with a lot of scripting and but in the end, the argument we used, if we can use a tool and save 10, 20, maybe 30% of the admin time, business case is done. So we started looking at what at the functionality we would really need, and we quickly came down to RES and AppSense, because those two are the market leaders.
Yeah, but we can't use those tools because we had that experience with them 7 years ago. So we don't really want
so there was a lot of negativity from the, especially line management in this case. And it was too expensive, it cost us this, and they were always telling us the license price from the initial acquirement. So not the runtime over 5 years with SA and stuff like that. No, it was the initial price, and that will cost us per year, and all of a sudden it was per month, and it was bigger and bigger and bigger, until I told them the real price, and they went, oh.
But it's quite interesting that on the VMware side, price isn't really an issue because that's a standard. Yeah. And then suddenly on another software product, price is an argument against.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's it's depending on, because they're horizontally organized. It's all for themselves. If my set is okay and I have the right price, I'm fine.
Yeah, you have a lot of islands over there. You have the storage island, you have the VMware boys, you have the Workspace island, you have the network guys, and they are not talking to each other. And
but, and now comes the fun, for us a little bit the funny part. The organization actually consists of a lot of IT organizations that are fused together. And in one of those organizations, they already were using RES, and they have gone through the tender process. So we could skip risk tender from our list. So we suggested, if we're going to go for a user environment manager and get the business case going, we still have to make it, we'll go for RES, because we don't have to go through the tender process again.
yeah,
And the experience is already there in the organization that is running it. So expertise was no issue anymore, and the tender was no issue anymore. It was just a feeling that it was too expensive, and that's the phase we're in right now. So next example, we'll not go into very deep, but for instance is access. Access and identity is a real pain in the ass, because we would like to have the identity from a lot of different identity providers, and then through a federation or a SAML connection, serve the identity to the resource.
Let's paint you a picture. We have to deal with 80 domains at the moment.
Yeah.
So, and if you have to do this with one-way selective trust, it's going to be a pain in the ass. So,
Yeah.
80.
80, yeah. So, and now comes the real fail is that we're, because, and that's another story, but we're going to use Citrix because they already have the tender process, etc., and a lot of knowledge. Desktop 7.6 does not support SAML or Federation at this point in time.
We know it's on the roadmap, but we don't know when. But we know it's on the roadmap. But yeah, that's really difficult. And you could solve it with NetScaler and shadow users and cookies.
A lot of complex configuration.
Maybe Ingmar can tell us something about it.
No, isn't your problem that you have 80 domains?
Yeah,
No, that's another problem.
that's one of the biggest problems we have. You're completely right. But
There is another use case because they also want to interact with, for instance, local government. And you want to use the identity store of the local government and just, and because it's all about working together these days. And you want to use the identity store of that local government.
Our government have a standardized ID, DigiD.
No.
No,
wish that was true.
I wish that was true.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
no, you're right. They are working on that, but that will at least take 5 years from now before they implemented that.
So yeah, that they agree on a good solution and etc. So.
Imagine you will log in with DigiD and then you need a new password. They send it to your home.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one is building an environment like this. We are depending on a lot of data center services, and we are not going to build these services. We get it as a service from the data center. But that's also a difficult discussion because they are building a large new data center, and yeah, building an environment for 50 to 100,000 users. You have a lot of demands on network, on storage, on all the other services you are depending on. And yeah, we only did a lot of requirements for those guys, and we did a lot of Moscow tables with a lot of requirements, and they have to deal with that. That's not our problem. We give that out of our hands. So they are just delivering any service we need, and that's the only thing we don't do ourselves.
And last one is monitoring. The only thing we take into account, because we have not designed this yet, is that we should, if we're going to go for a monitoring solution, it should be able to deal with all the major vendors. So if we, for instance, go from Xen server back to VMware, the monitoring solutions, it should just be a switch or something else, or from Xen Desktop to View. It should be able to deal with it. So we wanted functionally to be prepared for a switch in the future. So we're not dependent. So the monitoring solution is not really dependent on the solution we built today.
Yeah, and if you see this, you see you have a block and you have 18 layers of design choices to make. So that's a lot, and it's a lot of work. And keep it loosely coupled or vendor independent, because that was the question we got. It's really hard because, not to say almost impossible. But,
No, it's impossible.
But
at the moment.
yeah, at the moment, it's impossible. And thinking about this is how do you do this? And
Yeah, mitigate the risks you might have if you choose a particular product.
Start with define the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, because that's one of the biggest problems we had in the beginning. Our assignment was build us the next user environment. That was the assignment, nothing else. There was no project manager, there was no project leader, there was no budget, there was not. That was the question we asked us. We started. Start with functional requirements. We asked them, day one, we started on the project, okay, do you have the functional requirements for this environment? They didn't have, okay, then get us the functional requirements. It took them 7 months to write down the functional requirements
For the user.
for the user.
The functional requirements for all the layers we could envision ourselves, we wrote ourselves. So we had about 80 pages of functional requirements on all the layers.
And the other one, and I think that's a big one, the user inventory. If you have the possibility to use a tool to make a complete inventory of the customer, and you can use a tool like a SysTrack from Lakeside, do it, because it will give you a lot of insight in what's happening in the current environment of the customer. And I asked them in week 1, okay, I want to have an inventory of your complete environment and I want to use a tool for that, and can we do that? And the first question I got back is, yeah, don't you trust our environment?
Yeah.
That was the answer I got.
And we know all our applications, 1700 in total. We know them all, and then a week later, yeah, we know them all, but we don't have the information of all the applications. But it's the same old story, so we're not really telling something new in this sense.
And also management. If you start a project like this, that was one of our pitfalls, to get commitment from the higher manager.
Yeah, we asked for commitment. We got it when we had a project manager, and the project manager had to make a project start architecture thing, and then he got the commitment from management with a sum of money. Although we said we need it up front and we need this and such.
It took about 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Create one team with the administrators and the engineers inside, because they have to manage it at the end. And create one team with those guys is really hard, because they have a mindset that's not about working in teams. And if you want to build an environment like this with local engineers in an environment like this, you have to create a team with them. Put them in one room, put them day in, day out together, and work with them, train them, telling your story day over.
And so they can train us, or at least supply us with input for.
And on the other hand, they know the organization, so they know which people you can use for which tasks and which people you need to talk to get something done. So you really need those guys. And another one is security. Security officers are a pain in the ass, we all know. But yeah, you need those guys. And in government organizations, you have really tough security standards, and you have to cope with those. So start talking to security from day one.
No,
because
-1.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you see back procurement, procedures and procurement, also start talking to these guys day one, because those guys are really delaying a lot.
Yeah, but they also should know what is possible, what's not possible, what is already procured, where you can build on. So maybe we are looking at a certain software product, but they already have an alternative. Then we can use the alternative and don't go through the whole procedure.
And mitigate your risks. Also do it from day one, keep a list with all the risks involved and mitigate it, because that's really important.
Yeah. So basically, try to think out of the box all of the time. Think loosely coupled, vendor independent as much as possible, service oriented, but most of all, keep thinking and don't trust about just we have done it always this way. No, keep thinking and asking yourself, is this the right solution, and over and over and over again. So,
Okay.
small disclaimer, discussion. What do you think about our little thought experiment?
Excellent presentation, guys. You didn't mention printing, which amazed me.
We just
Always my absolute favourite topic.
well, yeah, basically they have an always a follow me printing concept, but the biggest challenge was not the follow me printing. It was the access and identity. So if we can share the identity, printing is no problem anymore.
So when you ask them about their 1700 applications, could they also tell you how every one of those printed on the back end?
No.
That's why we would like to have the inventory, because then we know that they don't want to, they don't want to invest in it. So yeah, we have to do it up.
Just doing a similar thing at the moment, and they've only got 430 applications, but they just have no concept of that printing even matters.
No. Now, luckily we know that the printing concept they have works, but the challenge they have is that the organizations who are not connected identity-wise to that solution have that problem. So we have a few organizations that are not yet connected into the same ID because they don't want to add extra domains to the 80 trusts they already have. And that's where we're stuck. So that's another example for that we need identity loosely coupled over the rest.
Do you have a plan for the identity?
No, because this is very high over, and even we don't want to burn our fingers on that project.
Out of the scope.
Out of scope.
Yes, out of scope. It's another project within the government, and we guess it will be there within the next 5 years.
Yeah, but what we design, we test against the fact that it should be able to, or at least in the future should be able to cope with preferably SAML. Yeah, of course.
Just say, excellent presentation. You just kind of described my last 2 years, really. But if I was to summarise, if I was to do the same thing in my presentation, I'd probably summarise it to say, you know, a couple of things. Ignorance is bliss to some degree. So us solution architects have been around for a while. If you know I'm vendor agnostic, you guys are. That's the worst thing in some respects you can be to that kind of business that you're operating in. You know, if you just go in and you were just, hey, all I know is VMware or Citrix, in some respects it's kind of simple because you relay one message and they kind of get it. It might not be the right one. But,
yeah, but even within that, for instance, Citrix was not really a discussion. So even with that mindset, they were able to set certain layers to have a discussion about it and question, and one day it was this and the next day it was that, and it was going like this.
Yeah. So I was going to say, ignorance is kind of good and bad, but the more you know, the harder it is to make the decision. And you said that it's a great project. It's like, it's greenfield, it's a white page. Well, and I think like what I've looked at is like as a solution architect that you need design parameters, which you would call requirements, and you make your own. And sometimes you look at what a technology can do, and then you make requirements around it, and you give them the answer before. You kind of knew what country you're in, but you didn't know what kind of house it was or how many rooms. It's too open, and actually it's literally mission impossible.
Yes, sort of.
At 10,000 seats, kind of, it doesn't really matter once you get above a certain number. It's complicated, right? And
but it is sort of a mission impossible. But because the project started off on the wrong foot. It was put under another project, and then management said, this is going to be too big. Then they placed it outside. We were designing more and more and more, just by being creative, taking into account what we knew of the organization. Then the organization said, no, we're going to make it a new project. We have a project manager, and then all the documentation was down the drain.
6 months of work.
Yeah, 6 months of work. But the upside of this, and that's where the mental programming comes in, we were telling the story over and over again. And it's not really telling people that it should be decoupled, but think of the OS as something that can move or that changes through time. Or that if you, for instance, they're at the moment stuck on Fujitsu, but next year they have a new contract and it could be HP or whatever.
But it's interesting, I don't know what your opinion on like, it's nice to be agnostic and kind of like, you take the end user monitoring one.
Yeah.
You said, wouldn't it be good if we can pick a product, maybe can do anything?
Well, not exactly anything, but at least be prepared on a possible change.
But one scenario I kind of came to the conclusion was, to get a product, let's say use that one as an example, to get a product that is neutral can cost you more than the short-term gain of just using whatever maybe VMware or Citrix provide out of the box.
True. So
and you could just say, well, actually,
if you go
there's always a plus.
Yeah. So if you go back to the circle of the organization, cost will always be. So there should always be a business case.
Yeah.
If we choose something and that's too expensive, because there's no gain, it's a no-go. Very simple. But at least we thought about it and we can defend why we choose product X, Y, or Z.
Other questions?
Question. One of the design principles was simplicity, and I've seen all the layers in the stack, and I'm wondering why you didn't go for a local workspace concept, because they already had local workspaces, they already had SCCM. Why ship in all the cities, all the all the stands?
That's a good question. But one of the parts of the assignment was we want to have a centralized workspace environment, and we want to have it from our
any device,
within our private cloud.
any place, anywhere.
Still do that. Still do that without having centralization, though, really.
Yep. Remote C.
Yeah. You know, like the thing is that we do kind of, you know, you do kind of get sucked up in your own ideas. Sometimes the centralization must be VDI. It doesn't need.
Basically, what we have now is a mix of a lot of stuff.
Right,
Because what we did not tell is that there are also managed laptops, endpoints. They are also looking at corporately owned personal equipment, which is not managed, but then security comes in. So we need something mobilized, like Zen Mobile, Good, or whatever. Yeah.
All right, let's have the last question, okay?
In your personal opinion,
Yes.
if one of those requirements was removed, for instance, vendor independent, would the end result would have been better? So you weren't able to choose a holistic approach, and maybe they take some, as Andrew said,
Would you have wasted 6 months, basically? You know, that's the point. You know, there was 6 months there with PMs and, you know, pros and cons papers and probably matrices of which one was better and worse. And ignorance, kind of, sometimes.
Maybe end up with 10 different roadmaps of 10 vendors.
You're not 70% of the way there, whatever you did, right?
Very true. I'm not sure in this case if it would have led to something better, because that's basically what we did, but what we try to do over and over is ask ourselves the question, if they wanted to move away from Citrix in this case, is it possible? Just to make sure that they're in the design documentation we have an exit strategy. And that kind of, because we were talking about it, led to this presentation as a thought experiment. But basically, we had to stick with Citrix, we have to stick with VMware. But because they wanted to invest a lot of money, because we need the premium license of VMware, just to do GPU, it felt kind of wrong, because we could use that money for other stuff and have on the whole have a better business case. But that's very difficult to get here.
All right, sorry, we have to finish because there is the next session.